Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to Looking Ahead, the series where I break down and analyse the meta, what's happening over in Japan, and how that could impact ours. Today is an incredibly exciting episode. The new set have been released in Japan, and we're going to look over the city leagues and see how Gardevior EX is now pretty much the best deck in the new format right now, with the new cards and the ability to use Drift Bloom to do so much damage. So we're jumping right into looking at the metagame for the top 8, and for the first time ever, Gardevoir is now the best placing in the meta sharing, being 18.4%, much higher than its usual between 8 to 12%, which has kind of been like teetering out for a long time, but it's dethroned Lugia and Lost Box to be the best archetype, which is getting the top 8, which is really good to see. And we're seeing quite a few new archetypes also coming in. Xian Power has got 9.5% of it, kind of being like when Mirado's been, because Mirado's now being pushed away. Now, Xian Power is a very interesting, really cool deck. The ability to hit really, really hard and utilizing Excalibur to do so much energy by flooding the board. And even the Ting Lu, this interesting control archetype to stop the opponent from using abilities, is even scraped in at being 3%. Lugia did kind of keep up with being the 12.5%. It did gain some of the new energies, especially having the use of that Luxray, which I showed you last week, as well as the kind of like the counter energy, so it can attack for 1 energy and get those big one-hit KOs on the opposing Lugias if you are behind. Lost Zone definitely has fallen a little bit by being 12.2% and 8.6% for Giratina V-Star version. It didn't really get so many big sort of toys to play with. It's still performing incredibly well by being a really, really oppressive deck. But because Gardevoir has now come out to be a really, really good with its single price attackers, Lost Box really can't keep up with it because they can just promote some of the Gardevoirs and they have to adapt for it by potentially going back to the Moltres, the Baby Moltres list, which were at the start of the format in Japan, if you can remember. And then a few other ones have started to appear. Arceus Tina is really kind of being a force right now with its incredibly aggressive setup turn 1. And if it gets everything to get the Giratina out turn 2 attacking, it's going to be unstoppable. So very, very exciting to see the metagame really start to evolve and change right now, especially with seeing how Gardevoir. I thought Gardevoir was definitely going to be in a good position, but it's good to see how well it is performing. But if we look at the top 6 decks, Gardevoir is there up there, right, being the number 1. And this is only from results from Friday to Sunday, because that's when Japan got their new cards. Unlike us, which we have to wait 2 weeks after release day, Japan get to play with them the day of release, which is really quite interesting, especially as they've had a shortage of cards. But yeah, Gardevoir up there is being incredibly dominant in that number 1 spot with 9 wins and 10 top 2s. Think about that over the, maybe 30 odd cups, the city leagues, they probably had maybe even 40. Nearly 20 of them, which is with Gardevoir. That's insane being in the finals. Gardevoir is so powerful right now. Ability to use the new energy, so it can use that and do incredible amount of damage with the single prize Gardevoir, as well as Drift Bloom, because you have that new item card, which gives it a huge amount of HP, and you can get those big one-hit KOs with very, very little energy. The Weirdeer Lugia build, which is kind of, we talked a lot about as a new way to play Lugia, is definitely looking forward to be a much stronger sort of archetype, because now you can have Snorlax, you can attack with it and not worry about it falling asleep due to having therapy energy. And because of its huge, incredible synergy with Weirdeer V to do those big one-hit KOs in the end, you can go for the 2-shot and then eventually get into the big KOs with Weirdeer. Lost Box is still up there, but definitely mainly focused on the Moltres as being some of the winning sort of archetypes. Being at the 3rd spot does not make we shouldn't respect it anymore, because it's at number 3. It has been dethroned a lot, but it's always been around that 1 to 4 sort of spot since the first ever Champions League. Big new deck I want to talk about in the number 5 spot is Xian Pao. A lot of people kind of thought, is this going to be the new Miraidon? Like, is it just going to be the poster boy to be a really, really powerful, aggressive deck and not really perform as well? But it did get 3 wins and quite a few good sort of top 8 placements as well as top 2s. Definitely focusing on having a few sort of builds, maybe having a high count of Xian Pao with Excalibur, but also some of them are using the, what's it called, Ancient Origin form Palkia as a good sort of secondary attacker, as well as powering up the Pokemon, so you don't need to rely too much on superior energy retrieval. Mew and Arctina, these decks have always been coming and going. Mew is kind of losing the top 3 spot. It's always been there, similar to Lost Box, but it didn't gain so many amazing new cards. It does get quite more threats, especially with the special energy removal card from the stadium. So that can be very much a threat on Mew. It's not going to be as safe as it was before. And Arceus Giratina has overtaken the Giratina Lost Box build, even though Giratina Lost Box did have more placements in top 8, but Arceus Giratina got those few more wins because it can utilize a few of these more cards, as well as having this incredibly good synergy. I think this is definitely a more diverse top 6 than what we've been seeing. Definitely in the last few weeks, we've been seeing mainly focusing on having a Weirdeer V and Lugia being up there at the top. Mew and Comfey sort of Lost Box engines, the Cramorant and Sableye kind of teetering as well near the number 1 spot. But we're seeing Gardevoir really push forward. Definitely a threat, especially even after this weekend at EUIC getting 2nd place. Gardevoir being number 1 right now, it's a really, really good time to start and learn about the deck. Definitely something to always be considering for. So we've kind of looked, there's not too much really big things to talk about, so I want to showcase some of the lists. These are the lists that surprisingly have done well and won, and the new archetypes will really keep an eye on, especially going into our new format in a very, very long time in NAIC, sorry. So let's have a brief look at one of the 9 winning lists for Gardevoir. Let's give you a better understanding about where some of the lists are sort of evolving. And the big changes we are playing is Drifloon, the one that does 30 times the amount of damage counters on it. If you attach the basically this new big charm to the Drifloon, you would add an additional 50 HP, so you can attach a few more energies to get those big one-hit KOs on opposing V-Stars and huge EX attackers, which is still very, very powerful. This doesn't even play any V, so you're not utilizing any of the Forest Steelstone or Sky Steelstones, which you've seen some good success right now in our meta, but focusing more on the Drifloon. With the only other new card is definitely Iona. I think Iona is an incredibly good inclusion on Gardevoir because it's much slower to get the setup. You might be 1 or 2 prizes behind before you can get the big explosive one-hit KOs. But because you're mainly going to be attacking with single prizes now, you don't need to rely too much on the Zacian V to get the powering up. That's what Drifloon's for. That's what Gardevoir is. Because the Gardevoir is going to get those big KOs, especially with that counter energy. I always forget its name. It's things like multi-energy, or that's all the three colored energies on this Gardevoir, which is really, really good. Got an additional 90 damage, which is always going to be attached for your turn, as well as you can utilize its Shine Arcana and Gardevoir's amazing ability to flood out with energies as well. Very, very more consistent sort of build. It even has access to Super Rod instead of using Miriam as a supporter. So this list here is looking to be a lot more aggressive with the Iona plays with Palpad, and then your other sort of additional attackers like your Drifloon. And you can easily get that out with that stadium where you can get any basic Pokemon which isn't a rule box down and play, which is incredibly powerful. And you even run a Gallade for consistency. I think Gardevoir, this list really showcases and highlights the importance of how good Gardevoir is, definitely in this new format. The other big poster child is the Xian Power list. This is focusing primarily on having Xian Power as your main attacker. You even have a 4-3 line of Excalibur. Now you might be thinking, why not play a stage 1? Well, right now, item lock isn't very popular. We've been seeing this trend a lot more. People aren't really running the stage 1s because the Bennett isn't really opposing item lock. It could see some more play, yes, now with Noivern EX is out in the field, so we could kind of respect item lock, but right now, item lock really just isn't a thing, so you don't need to worry too much about it. The list here is built very, very consistently. The 1-1 line of barrel may be a bit low, but having that draw engine, especially with Greninja, is really, really powerful. So your turn 2 is primarily just going to go Iridium to get Rare Candy by Excalibur, if you don't have it in hand, and just flood the board state in here. The Skate Park, I think, is a very good stadium card in this list. The ability so you can use your Xian Power, get the 2 water energies, attach them to Xian Power, retreat, but because you have Skater and Skate Park in play, those 2 energies go straight to your hand, then you go into your fresh Xian Power, search energy for another 2 energies, and then you can then use those energies to attach with Excalibur. So instead of just having normal 2 energies you can search for, you have both of those 4 energies. That additional 240 damage is very, very relevant instead of just hitting for that 120. You do have the Kyogre there as a really good single price attacker to do 180 damage with you discarding it. Because there is so much discarding, you need to have a high count of superior energy retrievals, which in this case you do play 4. And even Clara to get out some of the energies from the discard pile, potentially even some other sort of recovery sort of cards. Again, this is a very straightforward Xian Power, which we've kind of seen. So things you can easily change for, you can add other attackers like the Kirim, the 2/2 line of Palkia, but with that you can get rid of some of the consistency cards, potentially some of the superior energy retrievals, to allow room for these big aggressive attackers, so Xian Pao can be really, really good. Again, this is right early to sort of stages. We're kind of understanding where Xian Pao can evolve into, how it could change. Is this the right way to go, or do we have to go to Palkia? We're only in the first few days. Next week it's going to evolve. Could it still keep up? That's why it's really exciting to always cover it week by week to see if these new decks really kind of can keep up. Another new deck, which is really aggressive, is this Ting-Lu EX, especially with its amazing ability where any Pokemon with damage counters on which isn't an EX have no abilities. Very, very, very aggressive. Utilizing stuff like Hawlucha and I believe Ting-Lu's actually up attack, you can deal some more damage to anywhere on the bench. You have the Spiritomb as well, which is really good to slow down and stop all of the V's abilities and basic V's ability in play. This is very different to some of the other Ting-Lus. It did in fact win 2 City Leagues, but this one I thought was definitely the most aggressive and more sort of one which you could really see use with. Having the Greedy Pickaxe, I believe that's what it's called, is very, very good because you can all of a sudden attach some energies very quickly to potentially get a turn 1 attack. And if you don't get that, you have Koraidon EX as a really good attacker as well as Energy Accelerator due to having high Ultra Balls and Professor's Research. Because you're trying to stop them from using abilities, you have the huge range of things with Spiritomb and Hawlucha to do those damage. And even Gatedraw Bog, so when they bench a Pokemon, potentially they could put some damage on these and their Vs or any Pokemon abilities, and they won't be able to use their effect. Although it could be similar like Lumion, there is still ruling on that. If you play the Lumion with Gatedraw Bog and Ting-Lu, which one comes into it first? So I believe Lumion 30 would still be in play, similar to how you can use Star Alchemy under Path to the Peak. And similar to Gardevior, there is a high count of Iona. You want to be as disruptive as possible. You want to make sure your opponent doesn't get the setup they might need, or if they are going ahead of prizes, that's why Iona is an amazing comeback card. And we're going to see this trend in all these decks by having a very high count of this amazing supporter card. So just be prepared for being Iona to 1, potentially lose the game. So this is a really lovely control sort of deck, but there are a few other sort of controllers that did come out. And this is a block control that actually ended up winning an event. Control did really well this weekend, and it utilizes the really cool Radiant Eternatus. We have not seen Eternatus be a success. This was a very hyped sort of card going into this when we got on Crown Zenith, but it just really fell flat. But this is really good. You utilize with the Snorlax. The Snorlax has the block ability where the opponent just can't switch out of their active. They can't retreat, which is really, really good. And you can use Radiant Eternatus to get out your Duraludons, and the Duraludons are incredibly high HP Pokemon, which have 330 HP and can't be affected by any Pokemon that has any special energies to it. So this is an incredibly powerful wall, and you can utilize that with some of the healing cards in here, but you don't have any of those right now. So it's a really good sort of protective, big, it will be like a big basic, and you can get that out early as turn 1 due to Radiant Eternatus. The other sort of cards in here, which I can kind of speak of, which is really powerful, is the new Mimikyu with that Safeguard ability to protect it from EXs and Vs. And it even has the brand new supporter card, which discards one special energy from each of your opponent's Pokemon in play. Very, very powerful in a Lugia and Mewlis to really try and limit them from any of their options. The rest of it is fairly straightforward with some of the control aspects. Penny is very, very good. Sydney, Roxanne, Fiona, and Team Yell's Cheer. I'm not exactly a sort of control expert. I don't understand how all some of the cards will work, but having these high counts of Ivern to get those item cards you might need, and potentially the Plot Helmet as well as Sky Seal Stone, and the Pidgeot to have a constant loop in there, it's really, really powerful. I really like how control is really trying to come back. Xander did incredibly well in EUIC with a very similar sort of aggressive sort of list, and Block did also a very good success. People aren't using many switching cards except in like the cards like Lost Zone as well as Miraidon, and other ones that could be really, really punished. So having a high count of these sort of blocks of artifacts is definitely something to be considered because it is still doing well even in our format. Another deck, so we're going to look at the ones which didn't get any wins, but performed pretty well, is Measurado EX. This is an archetype which I think is really, really good. I really like it. It didn't gain any new cards really, except Iona. But Iona is really good being as this big disruptive card. You're stopping your opponent from playing any sort of cards. Meowscarada has an amazing attack where you can use its attack to do 100 plus 100 more if they have any damage counters on, and its ability to do 20 damage to one of the benched Pokemon. Very, very good. So I think similar to Inteleon VMAX's sniping ability, which has been very, very popular in Rapid Strike, but utilizing it with this and Radiant Alakazam and Yoga Loop in with the Medicham, you can get those big, potentially 2 turns of big damages. I like how Measurado is kind of coming around. I think this is something we should at least consider being a sort of deck. It doesn't kind of keep its own because it is a stage 2 and it's very reliant on its ability. And if you don't get set up, you really can't keep up as well as possible. But in Japan, remember, they play best of 1. So this actually did well in a 64th place City League in a best of 1 format. It's very, very, very powerful. I think this is something which you should really keep an eye on if you want to test out any of these new archetypes. Another fun one is Drago. Yes, this one got a top 4 and it utilizes the forestry. Yeah, I think that's it. Forestry and the ability on its EX. Very powerful way to discard and search your deck for some energies and attach them to your Pokemon as you like. And this is so good in this Drago sort of list because you can get those in big explosive turn 2 attacks. They might go behind, but because they're behind, you can use Defiant Band and Iona. So you're immediately putting so much pressure to more damage and disrupting your opponent at the same time. You can even use the Noivern's new attack where it's basically Chaos Wheel where they can't be damaged by, they can't attack any stadium cards or special energies. So this is really, really good in Mew because you can immediately put Path of the Peak down, get a potential knockout, and they won't be able to use any of their Genesect abilities. And other sort of regular ones you will see is like Giratina, Goodra, and Duraludon. Very, very, very powerful. And the Squawk ability EX, I haven't mentioned it yet, but this is a very good EX card for definitely the synergy to discard your hand on your first turn and drop to your 6, but you can only play it once per game. Very, 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 very strong. But I think this is really good using the forestry, especially with having the Defiant Band and Iona to be disruptive and do more damage very quickly. Really like how Drago is doing well. And the last big sort of kind of fun archetype which has come back is Reggis. Yes, Reggis, a deck which everyone thought really couldn't keep up after all the special energies got removed from format. It can do well now because of Iona, the amazing stadiums where it can search for it, Defiant Band, as well as the best saving grace for this, the Super Rod. Instead of you wasting your turn with Miriam, you can utilize Super Rod to get the Reggis back as soon as possible. This list does play the three Dragos and 3 Lekis. Leki is really good having the bad Leki, so you can utilize potentially recycling in your Defiant Band, Super Rod, or potentially any of the other trainer cards you may need. And Iona is really good at being a disruptive sort of card. This list is focusing on me attacking every single of the Reggis because of the Luminous Energy, which pretty much is always going to be an effect. It's always going to be a very colored energy because you're not really going to be attaching special energies for him. I think it was a good honorary mention that Reggis, for those Reggie believers, it is still possible. It did get a top 8 on the Friday, so there's definitely room to improve, and people will be looking at these lists and thinking how they can improve it, and could Reggie still be a threat? And finally, let's look at Xian EX, kind of the archetype which everyone thought would be a really fun one, and it's exactly how people are playing it. Very high counts of Iona as the new band to give it as much HP as possible, and the Fortress, that's the name, Fortress, to deal those big explosive energies. Turn 1 to use its other attacks. First one, do 60 times the amount of prizes your opponent's taken to one of their Pokemon. I believe it is a bench or a regular one, but with this format we have lots of Manaphy, it can be a bit tricky. But no, I think this is very fun just to see. This is a very aggressive sort of deck. You want to explode with your Fortress, have the acceleration to your Xian, do those big attacks, and disrupt them with Iona and Roxanne and Path to the Peak. Very, very fun sort of list to kind of round out the top 8s. So that's kind of been a big sort of little wrap up on what's happening over in Japan in its first few days of the City League with the new set. I'm so excited to be covering about this. And the big thing is, can Gardevior be stopped? Is this now going to be a new like Lugia, which we've been used to for so long, or the Lost Box we've been used to in Japan? Is this now the big BDIF, which cannot be stopped because of how amazingly powerful it gets with Iona and the three colored energy as one? It's incredibly powerful with its setup, but it can be a bit slow at times. Can the new decks really kind of keep up this Xiang, this Tinglu and Xian Pao and the other sort of archetypes that are coming? Are they sort of a formidable opponents? Can they carry on to evolve the meta as we see it today? But that's all I have time for today. I hope you have enjoyed this looking ahead video to kind of give you a brief insight to see how this new set has impacted. And it's incredibly exciting to see it is making the shake-up, which Triplet Beat never did. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please make sure to like and subscribe and comment what deck you're really excited to play in a couple months' time when we get it in our Paldean evolution. My name is Charlie TCG, and I will see you guys later. Bye for now.